Well, good evening, everybody. This is Tim Terranova, the proud superintendent of the Victor Central School District, here with you tonight for our budget hearing for the 22-23 school budget. Joining me at the podium tonight will be our Assistant Superintendent for Business, Derek Valise, and we're going to give a somewhat brief presentation on the proposed budget for 22-23. And then take any questions from the audience. And I know this is being live streamed at home, so we appreciate that. And then after we are done with the budget hearing, we will turn it over to our outstanding Victor PTSA to run Board of Education Candidates Night. So before I start, though, this is a really special week for us. This is not only Teacher and Staff Appreciation Week, but it's also today was Teacher and Staff Appreciation Day. So just a big shout out for our staff and our teachers and everybody who works with our kids every day, over 4,300 students, 800 staff members, above 800 staff members. We can't thank them enough for everything they do to make our district great and to really put our kids first. So happy Staff Appreciation Week and happy Staff Appreciation Day. In terms of what we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to discuss the objectives and timeline of our budget, talk a little bit about the impact of our expenses. Derek is then going to, actually I'm going to talk a little bit about the personnel additions, and then Derek's going to take over and review the expenses and the revenue. I'll mention and talk a little bit more about the school taxes in terms of revenue, and then turn it back over to Derek, who's going to discuss our propositions attached to the budget, as well as the budget vote and school board election information. Certainly at the end, we'll have time for questions if anyone has them. So in terms of our objectives, let me just give a really, really brief summary of some background of the Victor Central School District and its budget. So for many years, Victor had some incredibly great things happen, but some of those great things had a negative impact on our financial situation for many years. One of those was a significant increase in our enrollment, anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000, then jumping to 3,000, then jumping to 4,000, over 4,000 students. When that happened, right around 2008, in the middle of that, the state froze the foundation aid formula for Victor and for all school districts in New York State. It had specifically a very major detriment to our Victor Central School District because we were one of the only districts that was growing at the time. So the combination of freezing the state aid formula, which then amounted to Victor only being able to get somewhere between 50 and 60% of its foundation aid, and the growing enrollment caused some real stress in terms of the financial situation in Victor Central School District for many years. The per pupil expenditure was at one point about 3 years ago the third lowest in the entire state. The district was incredibly low on reserves, and many times in a few years before this, the expenses were actually outpacing the revenue. So there was a major challenge to the financial climate of our school district, which was mitigated in three separate ways recently. The first one was thanks to the community in the spring of 2020. As you know, the community decided to exceed the tax cap and increase our tax base, which had a significant impact on our revenue for the 2021 school year. And that was a major accomplishment, and that is still having significant positive ramifications now. And it was a huge commitment from our community and immense leadership from the Victor School Board at that time. Then, just to make sure people understand, that was not to increase staffing. That was to actually keep the existing staff for the 1920 school year, for the 2021 school year, and then start to build in some contingency money in our budget so we weren't, our expenses weren't the same or greater than our revenue. We wanted a little gap in there of contingency money. So that was really what was accomplished during that particular exceeding the tax cap. Then in the spring of 2021, two other really positive things happened. We started to make significant inroads in our advocacy to New York State, which decided to unfreeze the formula for state aid, which had a huge positive effect for the Victor Central School District because we began starting the 21-22 school year, which is this year, we began to receive a much closer amount of what we're supposed to receive in terms of state aid in the district. And that happened in the spring of 2021, and it really started to take effect for this school year. The other thing that happened was the federal stimulus money. And that federal millions of dollars for federal stimulus money, which is supposed to be spent over 2 to 3 years. Now, we have to be really careful. We don't want to spend that money on sustainable expenses because that money runs out. Really, we should be spending money on one-time or short-term expenses because it's short-term revenue. And that's what we've done, especially with our summer programming as well as some of the purchases in technology. But it helped us not have to use our general fund money to pay for that. So starting back in the spring of 2020 with the tax cap override and then the significant change in the state aid formula, thanks to our Board of Education and boards of education across the state, and then the federal stimulus money, those three positives have made a dramatic effect on our school district and is one of the reasons we're in such good shape right now overall. Now, as I said, though, because of those years where we were incredibly lean, thanks to the state aid situation and things out of the control of the district, such as enrollment, our staffing really did not increase at the level it was supposed to based upon our enrollment. So we were significantly understaffed in many areas. We still are moving into this year. So in terms of the objectives for next year's budget, we want to continue to right-size the historically understaffed areas within our school district. We want to balance that by continuing to keep the tax rate increase low, which is less than 2%. We want to maintain a strategy of having some contingency money left over at the end of the school year, and that's built into our overall budget so that if we have emergencies, we're able to spend the money on emergencies and not take it out of expenses tied to staff. And also, if we have some money left over, we can sustain our reserves if we have to use our reserves to spend them on this thing specified for that particular reserve. And we'll talk about this too tonight. We want to abolish the debt that is costing us millions of dollars in expenses over many years. So those are the 4 criteria leading into next year's budget. I just want to show really brief the timeline that we've used. There have been 6 public meetings before the April 7th Board of Education adoption of our budget. And those were transparent public meetings where we discussed different aspects of the budget, and certainly towards the March meetings, the entire budget. We just want to make sure people understand that this is a community connection that's really important, and we have to be as transparent as possible as we've discussed our budget process for the 22-23 school year. So what are going to be the major impacts in terms of expenses for next year? As I mentioned, we are looking at right-sizing our staff in many areas that have been understaffed for many years. That's going to be an addition of 32.9 positions. We're also going to have our typical contractual salary increases for next year. A major expense is going to be a significant increase in health costs, health premium costs. Our consortium that we work with has decided to increase the rates by that much because of the financial situation this consortium is in right now. We're working closely with that consortium to try to stabilize these health premiums over time, but right now that's going to be a significant increase. And then 2 other areas, we're adding $150,000 to purchase new maintenance vehicles and lawnmowers, and adding equipment and technology to support our continued focus on one-to-one tech. But let me talk specifically about the first one, the addition of 32.9 positions, because we all know that that's a significant amount. So going back to my background, remember when we exceeded the tax cap 2 years ago, we weren't able to add staff. That was just to maintain the existing staff that was at the time and still is underserved in many different areas. So we started to be able to make some inroads in that for this year's school budget. So we added somewhere between 10 to 13 positions for this year's school budget. And you can see the areas that are highlighted that we were able to add some positions to for this year. They are still areas of need on the right side of this chart, along with security that we weren't able to get to this year at all, music and extracurricular experiences, and support for our kindergarten classes with teacher aides. So we made, this means the ones on the, that are highlighted, we did make some inroads in, but based upon really looking at state guidance, national guidance, and comparable data with other districts, these areas are still significantly understaffed, from academic intervention services to social emotional learning support to special education to safety and security to cleaning and maintenance. These are areas that over time have become understaffed, and we still need to support greater staffing in those particular areas. So that led to this, which is the 32.9 positions. You'll see from the chart a variety of different areas that we're adding positions. It goes from, I'll talk just briefly about each one. So there's 4.1 positions added for student enrollment support. That's to maintain adequate class sizes, especially at the primary building and the ECS. That also includes some additional classes in business at the high school, because we have an increase in students who are interested in taking those courses. Those are students who primarily either would have had early dismissal or late arrival as seniors, or would have study halls. So it's a good thing that we're adding some courses to fill out especially some of our upperclassmen student schedules. It also includes some E&L support. Instructional curricular leadership, I've talked many times about restructuring the administrative group, especially in special education and instruction. That's not an addition of administrative positions. It's a restructuring. Where we are adding a position is a teacher on special assignment to support special education. And you'll see the 2 big ones, social emotional learning support, a 5.0 FTE increase, and then 10.0 FTEs in special education. That includes additional psychologists, social workers, counselors, and additional teachers and teacher aides to support programs such as our 1211, as well as additions to 811 and the addition of a 611 program to really meet the needs of students with complex challenges. And so they're able to support our kids in-house rather than having them go to other settings for their education. Academic intervention services have a slight addition to. As we continue to increase our one-to-one initiatives, we have some additions for instructional technology, music, art, and physical education, especially at the elementary level. As we increase sections at that level because of enrollment, we need to increase sections to allow for kids to participate in music, art, and phys ed. The Student Support 3.0, that's actually the support of teacher aides in our kindergarten classrooms. And again, that's been something that's been talked about for a couple years. That's a real need with our youngest learners so that we can have a teacher and a teacher aide in every kindergarten class for the vast majority of the day, which will, again, help our youngest learners succeed in kindergarten. A 3.0 FTE in security. This is a significantly large campus with one SRO at this point. We need additional security for the campus. It will include a security supervisor as well as 2 security guards that will support the entire district. We have to add some clerical support as well as cleaning. And some of the things with cleaning that we're doing is not only adding cleaners, but we're also changing some of the titles for new hires to custodians and custodial helpers, which can do have a greater job description than our cleaners and have a slightly higher hourly rate. We're hoping to attract some more candidates. So our cleaners are incredibly important and they're incredibly valuable. We want to add support for them because we need to improve the cleaning of our facility. So the total is 32.9 with an approximate additional cost of $2.05 million. I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Valise, who's going to talk overall expenditures.
Thank you, Dr. Terranova. So we're going to start off with our most important thing outside of our students, which is our staff. So we're going to be spending about $43 million in salary. And in addition to the increase in salaries, we're looking at an 82% increase in equipment. A large share of this is $150,000 for maintenance vehicles that Dr. Terranova shared. But we've also had some struggles this year with special education equipment, so there's additional money for adaptive equipment for special education. Our increase in contractual is a lot of related services that we have, but also looking to upgrade our floor scrubber machines, again, to maintain a safe, clean working space for everybody. We're trying to keep up with the rate of inflation with our supplies, so we adjusted that accordingly by 3%. Software, there's a large increase in software, about $92,000, $93,000. A lot of this is going to be right into the classroom used for instruction. Our library materials, textbook, all aligned with a lot of our aid, which is the instructional material aid. Tuition, this is special education tuition. So as we keep building these special ed programs, the long-term goal is to possibly see some of those students that are out of district come back. So in future budgets, that number could possibly decrease depending on how the committee works. BOCES, the big increase in BOCES is on top of the natural increase, there is that one-to-one initiative. We purchase a lot of our one-to-one devices, our Chromebooks through BOCES because that will generate future aid, which is a goal of the budget. And a large decrease in debt. So debt is usually paid for 20 years if you're rehabbing a facility, 30 years if it's a new build. We had some debt that fell off, so there was a decrease in aid and the corresponding debt payment that went with it. And then a large just about $3 million increase to fringe benefits, largely tied to the health insurance, but then there's also payroll tax and pension costs that correlate with the increase. It's a percentage of salaries, so as salaries go up, those expenses go up as well. So overall, on the screen, that is a pie chart to represent our expenses for the current school year. And as you can see, just under 75% is spent on our staff and our people between salary and fringe benefits, followed by debt, BOCES, and contractual and tuition. So with the changes from the current school year to next year, it's very similar, but there was an uptick in percentage-wise towards staff and a decrease from debt. So overall, the changes of the budget is pretty standard quo. This is an analysis by building. So this year we went in and did a major overhaul of our budget. We went into the weeds and examined where things were budgeted, and we found that while everything was budgeted, they may have been in the wrong building. So with the realignment of the budget this year, you'll see a large increase of early childhood. That is, a lot of our PPS, our social workers, psychologists, were originally recorded in the senior high, and we've placed them in the right building now. Outside of that, the large increase of district instruction is district initiative, a strategic plan, and trying to provide professional development for our teachers and staff. So that is being housed in the district instruction category. So as a comparison to our neighboring school districts in the various counties, as we're part of Ontario, Monroe, and Wayne, we are trailing behind the other districts. With this current school year, we're about $18,000, while every other district was $25,000 or more. While the goal of the budget is not to be the most expensive district or to pay more, this is a good metric to compare how we are comparing with other districts and services and what we provide to our students. So this change in the budget from the current year to next year, we're seeing ourselves catch up and being able to provide the same services, same level of instruction and just emotional support, social emotional support for our students. So this graph is just depicting the strides that we are doing through generating this additional foundation aid and the tax levy. So while this is a county view, this is a district comparison. So while the names of the schools have been omitted, this is I took a sample of our closest comparable districts, and as you can see, we are trailing every district, not just on a county average-wide, but on an individual school basis. So the increase for next year would help us surpass what's Monroe number 6 down there, which is the current year's budget. So we would assume or expect that Monroe 6 will still be ahead of us, but we're starting to catch up and being able to provide the same level of service as the other districts. Overall revenues. Our largest revenue is our tax levy. It makes up about 66% of our budget. So the proposed tax levy, while the budget was going up 7%, the tax levy, not the tax rate, the tax levy is going up 5%. The other major change is state aid, which it shows $2.5 million, but the largest part of that is $4 million in foundation aid that we're getting the next school year. And then the following school year, if everything goes as planned, we should see another $4 million increase. And that's netted against the decrease in building aid, which is why you see the 2.5. But that, again, we lost that debt that went with it. So overall, it's a $4 million foundation workable state aid that we can work with. So overall, it's just like with the budget increasing at 7.19%, the revenues are increasing 7.19%. Now Dr. Terranova will talk about taxes.
Thanks, Derek. And Derek mentioned this. The other thing I wanted to talk about is that as we prioritize spending and what the positions we are adding and keeping and the different focus areas, the strategic plan is now coming into effect, which is great. So the strategic plan, the 5-year strategic plan was completed this winter. We are now creating a 1-year management plan for the 22-23 school year. That management plan is tied to the first-year initiatives from the strategic plan, and that management plan is already being used, even though it's being created, and then it's also being utilized as we create that and has been utilized to prioritize our budgetary items moving forward. So many of the areas, especially, for example, special education, has been a high priority in our strategic plan, and it fits right into our expenses. This is a really important chart because it talks a little bit about and shows the benefit of the Victor Central School District. So as Derek said, our budget from this year to next year is increasing 7.19%. However, the entire tax levy is not increasing that much. The tax levy is increasing 5.19%, which is the cap. Now, it's less than the budget-to-budget increase, and the vast majority of that 5.19% tax levy increase is because of the growth of the community. So the state allows us to have that cap because we are one of the top 6 or 7 districts in terms of growth potential, not just enrollment, but growth in terms of commercial, residential, and then the cost of housing. That is a huge piece to Victor Central School District, which allows us to have that tax cap that's above 2%. But again, most of that is because of the growth. Most importantly, though, that's the levy. That's the overall tax levy. But when you look at individual homes and people per 1,000, we anticipate the tax rate to be at the highest an increase of 1.83%, which is significantly less than both the levy increase and certainly less than the budget-to-budget increase. And that 1.83% we anticipate to be smaller than that. In fact, from last year to this year, despite adding the 10 to 13 positions that we added for this year, our tax rate actually went down between last year and this year. Again, the highest it'll be for next year is 1.83% in terms of an increase, and we're hopeful that that's smaller than that. In addition to that, we're not going to continually add this amount of positions to the budget each year. That's not the plan. We are hopeful that this will make a significant dent into our staffing issues, and then we can stabilize the staffing increases moving forward, which would be the general plan. So that's why this chart is so important. Similar to the per pupil expenditures, you'll see how Victor compares to other counties, the county averages in terms of the tax rate. It's still significantly less than our other counties, even with the 1.83% increase. And again, the other counties, we haven't factored in any increase from this year because we don't know what that is yet, but we anticipate those to get bigger. So it's a real strong comparison in terms of our tax rate compared to other school districts in our area. And in terms of specifics, you can see the chart in terms of an increase. So if you had a $100,000 house, your taxes would increase $30.84 for the year, $61.68 for a $200,000 house, and $92.52 for the entire year for a $300,000 house. That's with the 1.83% increase, although, as I said many times, we expect that to be less of an increase. Derek will now talk about the separate propositions that are also on the ballot.
So the first proposition you're going to be voting on was going to be the budget, and then the second proposition is the bus purchase reserve. So last May, the community approved the purchase of buses for the upcoming school year, the 22-23 school year. So this proposition is for the following school year, the 23-24 school year, in which we are looking to purchase 7 new school buses for the cost of a little over $1 million. All of these buses that we're looking to replace are over 10 years old and well over 100,000 miles. So the request is just to try to refresh the bus cycle. And the third proposition that we have is the goal is to establish a bus purchase reserve. This is basically a savings account up to $6 million. One of the goals of the budget, as Dr. Terranova shared at the beginning, was to abolish debt or minimize it as much as possible. So the goal of this reserve is to at least take care of the local share, which is the difference between the amount of aid that we receive from the state of New York and the debt payment made on the buses. And as a hot topic that's been around lately, the school districts are going to have to stop purchasing diesel buses in the next 5 years. So again, this is another method that we could try to offset some of those future costs. So we have to stop purchasing them in 5 years. Kelly Klink and myself, Kelly is being the Director of Transportation, we've been attending webinars and trying to see what type of grants and opportunities are out there to minimize the impact of this change. But this is another one, a proposition the district is proposing to try to minimize future tax increases. The next proposition is another capital reserve, a savings account up to $10 million. Again, the community last May approved a $10 million capital project based on our historical capital project that will get us about a $27 million project. Since the community approved that proposition last May, the district, their architect has come through our buildings and examined our existing facilities and found about $27 million in renovations to maintain our existing. And as many of you guys know, we are bursting at the seams. So the goal of this proposition is to add another $28 million to create new or redesign our current our instructional areas to better suit our students today and in the future. So Dr. Terranova will take over for the candidates.
Yeah, just one mention on the propositions. There's no money that we're putting, we're not advocating to put the 10 million or the 6 million in the reserves for next year. It's the ability to have those reserves set up so that in the future we can put money in there to support the purchase of both buses as well as potentially facilities to add on to if we need to based upon potential increased enrollment, as well as certainly our repairs that happen every year in our facilities. So it's the ability, the community would be giving us the ability to create those reserves and have the opportunity to do that. And then last thing is on the proposition, we have 3 board candidates for 3 board positions that are open. Lisa Kostecki, Timothy Delucia, and Kristen Elliott are our board candidates. Any questions from the audience? If you do, I think you're supposed to go to a microphone there. Thank you. So the live audience that is listening at home can hear you.
Just a quick question on the bus proposition. Does that tie you into what kind of buses? Because, like, can we make that 23, 24 bus purchase be electric or something more sustainable? Or does it tie you into diesel? Or
So this proposition actually does tie us into diesel. The supply chain, there isn't a parking lot where you go and you select a bus. So we have to order them ahead of time. So they've actually started, once we get approval on this proposition, they're going to start heading into production. So this proposition does currently, yes.
So that's a bummer.
Unfortunately, we didn't know about that was coming at the time when we worked with the bus vendor. So it kind of came late on us. Yes.
Any other questions from the audience? Okay, so, oh wait, I have to do the next slide. So today was May 3rd. This is the budget hearing following by the PTSA's Meet the Candidates Night presented by PTSA, PI, and Voice. May 17th is the budget vote, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the ECS boardroom. That's a new location for this year, so just we're going to have parking and security and make sure people can get there easily, get in and out to vote. Again, with our budget, main focus areas, right-sizing our staff, and so that we can support the needs of all of our kids. We're going to stabilize that after this year. That's our goal as much as possible. Keep the tax rate increase below 2%. It's going to be at least, at the most, 1.83%, hopefully lower than that. Build in some contingency money. Continue to build in contingency in our budget to support emergency situations, as well as keep our reserves stabilized over time. And again, just make sure that we are having a comprehensive education for our school children, having the best possible education that we can have, and eliminate as much debt. You heard that first proposition with the bus purchases. We want to try to stop doing that and move into purchasing them through the money from our reserves, which again doesn't come out of the general fund. Those are the propositions. In addition to that, we know there's the Town of Victor library vote, which is mandated to also be on our voting propositions, and that's the Town of Victor's library vote. That's an additional proposition to this budget that's not specifically related to the Victor Central School District. So that's our budget presentation right now, and I'm going to turn it over to the PTSA for the Meet the Candidates Night. Thank you, everybody.
If any candidate would join me at the front, find a spot at one of the tables. You take your time. Thank you for staying for the Meet the Candidate component of the evening. We have 3 candidates running for 3 open seats: Tim Delucia, Kristen Elliott, and Lisa Kostecki. Did I say that correctly?
You did.
All right, good. Tonight, we have some questions from our in-person audience based on some past inquiries. But I'd first like to get you started with introducing yourself and explaining a little bit about your why you're running for this position. And please take just about 2 minutes to introduce yourself and state your why. So if you're ready, we'll start with Tim for this one.
Start with me?
That's okay?
Thank you, sure, yeah. Thanks, I am Tim Delucia. Been around for a little while. As a board member, I'd like to continue. I've been a district resident for 36 years, a husband, wife Marilyn, a dad to Michael and Aaron, and most importantly, a grandpa to 5 grandchildren, which keeps me young. And as a board member, I'm thankful for the opportunity to serve. So I just wanted to say that we are fortunate to have community members who care deeply about our children and their schools, and parents who want the best for their sons and daughters. We have dedicated staff, all committed to preparing our students for their future. I want to acknowledge and thank the school community. This community is involved and supportive. This is evidenced by the positive support of our budgets, the many donations given by parent groups, individuals, organizations, and businesses, and the many volunteers involved week after week with our students. I have served with many talented and dedicated board members. I am only one part of the effort that works to provide the best opportunities for students of the district. We strive to support the talented people that do the important work, providing those opportunities for our students. I have been privileged to be part of that for many years. We are also fortunate to have a devoted, involved, and talented superintendent, Tim, who has been a great addition to our team. So thank you for being here and for your support of the district. You are supporting the future of our community, and that's why I'm running for the board.
That's a tough act to follow, the prepared statement, sir. I'm just going to speak from my heart, which is typical, I think. First of all, I want to introduce myself, Kristen Elliott. This is my 3rd term, running for my 3rd term proudly on this seat for the Board of Education. I am a 28-year resident of the district. I've had the privilege of having my children go K-12 through this district and literally take advantage of every single opportunity that they could possibly take through this district, through their leadership activities and athletics, enrichment activities. They're all launched into incredible careers. And I realized that at the time in my past, when I was a board member, I was really investing myself in their interest and the interests of their peers and this community. And then I realized that my work wasn't done. And so my why is to continue the great work. I've kind of had the opportunity to see the struggle that this district has gone through financially in our past, and how we were still able to support the incredible faculty and district community and all of those who were involved in moving my children and their peers through incredible experiences. But now we are on the threshold of incredible opportunity with a superintendent and a leadership team that is so dedicated. But now we have a lot more means and financial opportunity to really take us to the next level. I mean, we were a premier district. Now we're going to be just absolutely incredible. And I am very proud to throw myself into programs, into the strategic plan. I've been an educator for 28 years. I'm on both sides of the fence. I know the hard work. I've been in the trenches, but I want to do everything I can to support the great programs, from those who have a lot of need to those who need a lot of enrichment. So I'm proudly here to serve. Thank you.
And then Lisa.
I'm Lisa Kostecki. I have been a Victor resident for the past almost 14 years now. My why is really about my kids and about everyone else's kids in this district. I've spent 20 years working in the higher education industry, and so I know that it requires a very strong partnership with students, parents, teachers, administrators, staff. I want to bring that experience into the K-12 arena. I have a very strong a sense of, I believe, what it takes to have every student feel a sense of belonging, have all teachers and staff feel that same sense. I think the Victor School District can be the greatest, just like Kristen said. We've had challenges in the past, and my why is about helping to make an impact to meet those challenges head on.
And we'll take questions from the audience now, from the in-person audience.
Hi there, I'm Cindy Riley, President of the Parent-Teacher Student Association and also a parent. Thank you so much for the questions from the audience. My first one for you is, why is the 5-year strategic plan so important to VCS? Give you a couple minutes each to answer that question, and we'll go ahead and start with Kristen this time.
Shall I pause a moment to give people time? Can I start? I made the commitment to be part of the strategic planning committee, which I took 4 days out of my own time at school to immerse myself. I feel like I'm at a bit of an advantage because I got to see how the whole plan started. I have never been more impressed with how deeply the questions and the concentration on where are our weaknesses, where do we need to grow, what are we doing well, and we flushed out such incredible answers qualitatively and quantitatively. There's data, hard data, and then we had student representatives that gave us such incredible insight as to where they see this district going. And then we had educators, we've had school psychologists, we had community members of what their vision was. And the 5-year plan exposed our vulnerabilities and, allowed us to say, we have to put one foot in front of the other. It's a 5-year plan. Ambitiously, every committee wanted their thing to be done first. And we looked at what was the most critical thing for year 1, and it became a framework. It became a lesson plan, and I can speak in analogies. You have to have a long-range plan, and then a short-term plan, and then a daily plan. And this 5-year plan was so carefully and thoughtfully written that the management plan, which is how we roll it out, directs us on our yearly goals. We set yearly goals, we set quarterly goals, we set weekly goals. It drives our professional development, and it drives where do we want to see our students 5 years from now. And it makes us authentic, and it certainly plays into a high level of accountability, because we can look back and say, you promised, or we set our goal to be here, and now where are we? So it gives us a chance to reflect, but without a framework, it's like writing a paper without an outline. You have to kind of know the big picture, and proudly, I congratulate the 30-plus members that were deeply involved in that. Thanks.
I've spent more than 20 years in the private sector. I have to write a strategic plan every year for my division, for my team, for the work that we do. Without that strategic plan, you cannot achieve your mission or your vision for your organization, for your school district, or whatever you are writing that strategic plan for. It's essential in order to understand the operations of the district, the strategies you want to face, And you need to look at the analytics and determine how you're going to measure whether or not the strategic plan has even been effective. So I'm so excited to see that Victor has been spending time doing this, because this is going to allow us to truly lead and drive our mission and vision for the district.
Okay, thank you. So why is the five-year strategic plan important to the district? I wrote down a number of things. It focuses our efforts, knowing what the path forward should be, align resources to achieve the best impact, fix what needs to be fixed, highlight what we do well, and align our educational program pre-K through 12. These are all important things that we can accomplish, and this five-year plan helps us to do that. I don't know how to do this, but we had a great amount of input from community members, staff, professionals that helped us to put this together, that provides the map so that we can accomplish this. And I'm proud to be part of it. I'll learn along with the implementation of it. Looking forward to that learning. I guess you can always teach an old dog new tricks, right? Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm Carol Prescott with Partners in Education and PTSA and various things. Thank you for volunteering. I think a lot of people don't realize, you're doing this just out of the goodness of your heart. So thank you. Our next question is, what are the remaining effects of the pandemic on students, and how is VCS adjusting to those effects for students and staff? And we'll start with Lisa.
I think that we all know the social and emotional well-being of students was heavily impacted by the pandemic, and we continue to see mental health issues from it. I think, obviously, that's going to take some time to work its way out, and we're going to need to support teachers and students in different ways than we ever have before. This is unprecedented times. And I can't tell you exactly what that means, but what I do know is that in order for our students to feel safe inside their environment, we need to provide teachers and staff with the tools they need to provide that safety. As I look at my own kids who were, in 4th and 6th grade at the time the pandemic started, I am now seeing them thrive in different ways I've never seen before, but I'm also seeing them scared in different ways I've never seen before. And we're going to need to continue to talk about this with our students and understand what we need to do to meet those needs as time carries on. It's not also just the social and emotional, but it's also the academics. We know that there were many students who didn't get provided what they needed during this time. So I think this is going to be a part of, talk about a 5-year strategic plan, a 5-year plan to really see what we need to do to help these students continue to thrive in our district.
My turn. Well, we need to reestablish normal, right? That's something that has to be done. Obviously, there's the social emotional needs in our budget that you just saw reflects what we're doing as a district to help meet those needs, to make sure that the support is here for our students and our staff so that we can continue to reestablish normality. Masks, I know were a challenge for many of us, although I was told I was better looking when I wore one, so I didn't mind it. And obviously to reestablish connections. I mean, students are back in school, they're seeing their friends, they're participating in sports and extracurricular activities, and we feel as though that's going well. So those are the needs that continue to demand our focus, and those are the things that we will be challenged with, but I'm sure we can meet those challenges. We have excellent support staff here, and teachers just did an amazing job during this whole bizarre environment that we all lived through. Administrators also did a remarkable job. I was totally impressed, and hopefully we can get back to looking at that as history, not as future. Thanks.
So I'm going to take a different spin on this because it's evident that there's students with student and staff and leadership and our community members that have certainly the demands of the situation with the mental health issue. As a teacher, I'm going to share that pacing and a learning gap has been set in front of us, where how are we going to bridge that learning gap? How are we going to remediate students? How are we going to get them up to speed? Some teachers are like, oh, we've lost those years. You know, it's going to take years and years and years to catch up. And I think, you know, we need to just support each other and drive into that professional development. How do we bridge that gap? But I'm going to look at some of the positive effects, actually, because I think there's some good things that came out of it. This district really was lagging behind in technology. And sometimes necessity breeds innovation and moving forward. I don't think our one-to-one would have come nearly as quickly if we weren't forced to do it. And I'm very, very excited that we've brought that up to where we are competitive. I don't want to say competitive, but we're in the mix with all of our surrounding districts because we weren't, quite frankly. I know that when, as an educator, I often leaned on students who are so savvy technology-wise, they would help out. So I found that there was a lot more collaboration. And so that remaining effect is still happening. I think students are saying, you know what, this is how you can do this is how you can do that. And I think the whole paradigm of educating is shifting. You know, there's questions, and I'm not gonna open up a Pandora's box about assessments and state exams, but there was almost a relief that those exams were held for those COVID years, and there's at least been a willingness to look at how do we define what a holistic student is academically and all of the pieces. So it has challenged us positively that way, to look at some of the old traditional things that were happening, and maybe we should look at, you know, be more innovative that way. And I think parents were thrown a huge curveball, staying home, trying to homeschool, trying to work from home. And I think a lot of students had a greater ownership of their education. And I'm honestly missing that deep communication that I used to have with kids when that was the only line of being able to work with them. And so those remaining effects in terms of maturity of students and communicating and owning their educational journey are good things. So I tend to see the silver lining, and I'm proud of how this amazing district moved forward when we had to, on the fly, work through it. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sherry Helmer, and I chair our parent group here at the district, Voice. And I, of course, bring the special education question. My question tonight is, could you share your thoughts around the newly announced special education restructure? And I think that we're starting with Tim, right?
Could you repeat the question?
Can you just share your thoughts around the newly announced special education restructure? Thank you.
Hi, first. The special education rate structure, is that what you said?
Restructure.
Restructuring. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not qualified to answer this question. I'm at a loss. I would need help to answer the question, so I'm sorry, I'm going to have to pass. Oh, the administrative structure. Okay, now I understand. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, I'm thinking state law, and I'm thinking, holy smokes, I'm not there. No, thank you. Yeah, the restructuring really helps us to refocus and focus better on the needs of our special education students. And it does it campus-wide. You know, in the past, many of these programs were managed in each building in a separate silos type approach. We found that there were deficiencies in doing it that way. So from leadership from our superintendent and other consultants, we studied what needs to be done, how we can do it better, and this is a way for us to focus on doing the right thing for special education. It helps us to focus, and it does align it pre-K-12. Thank you.
We've had a number of outside consultants and, you know, professionals within our district really highlight the fact that this is one area of a lot of room for growth. With the restructuring, I'm going to keep it short. That K-12 is going to enhance the continuum of services K-12 in terms of if there's an 811 in the elementary building, it's going to carry, I mean, I'm not making promises, but the idea is that those programs will be a continuum K-12. Then there's a continuity K-12 because they're speaking the same language. And then I'm going to refer back to what Mr. Valise was saying is in having that continuity in the continuum of services, students who are not able to have their educational program in-house, in district, will be able to have that. And then as a result, there's a budgetary there's a fiscal responsibility and a budgetary benefit for having students in district. So it's staying in compliance, it's meeting the needs of our students, having everybody on the same page. We can track students K-12 and meet their needs and watch their growth.
Simply put, I think this restructure is long overdue and much needed. In speaking to parents, we have not been meeting the needs of our special education students. I think this board knows that. I think our district knows that. This is the first step in that direction, in my opinion, and it's the beginning step. There's more work to be done to ensure that those students are making their way through this district feeling as if they belong and feeling as if their needs are met. And it's not just those students, it's their parents as well. So I'm incredibly excited about this restructure and the staffing changes we are making that were just talked about in the budget forum, as it is absolutely needed to continue the strength of this district.
Equity and inclusion framework. How will you support this delicate, important, and oftentimes controversial work here at Victor?
Can you repeat that? It was a little...
Yeah. Oh, sorry. New York State is implementing the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Framework, DEI work. How will you support this delicate, oftentimes controversial work here at Victor Central Schools?
I think I start. Delicate indeed, but very needed work. This is a big part of our strategic plan, and there was an entire committee that was dedicated to this. Without speaking on behalf of that committee, because that framework, again, is a 5-year plan framework, it certainly is work to be done, and whatever the professional development, will start there, and then certainly creating a culture I mean, that was a big part of the discussion in many of the groups in that strategic planning workshop writing. It's about everyone feeling welcome, everyone feeling a part of a community that supports the diversity, whatever that definition of your diversity is, and we're here, and I'll leave it there.
I agree with a lot of what Kristen said. As one of the very few Jewish residents in this district, I have often felt unwelcome. We have had challenges facing anti-Semitism. I know I'm not alone in that feeling, as other groups feel that they have not been welcome or included. It is controversial, and it is difficult to talk about, but if we don't talk about it, we don't get any better. So to me, this is one of the most important parts of our strategic plan. Again, it goes back to that sense of belonging. We want everyone who walks through this door to feel like they deserve to be here. In order to do that, we need to teach better and provide those tools to those teachers to teach better on these issues. Students need to have a general understanding of what it means to give and receive respect from one another. And that needs to start at the youngest of ages. So no matter how controversial it is, we have to face it head on. If we don't, we're not doing anything better for this district to make people want to be here or feel welcome.
Okay, I too believe this is important work. I mean, everyone should have a sense of value in any community that they're part of. We want to have a culture that supports. We want to have a welcoming community. There's work to be done. We are going to make sure we keep a close eye on that because we want to do it in a way that's reflective and positive and creates the right kind of culture for our district. So I agree that this is very important and potentially controversial, but it's work that we're going to do. Thank you for the question.
I'm just going to add a little piece. I think the biggest piece is the authenticity of it. The more I listen to my colleagues, it's not just rhetoric. I mean, we are digging in, and there's going to be an authentic lens on this, and it is hard work. It's vulnerable work, and I'm immensely proud that it came to the forefront, and we're ready for this. So, thank you.
Thank you. Kristen added a little extra to that question. Tim and Lisa, do you want to add anything else?
No, I'm good, thank you.
You're good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Couldn't agree anymore.
All right,
with
good.
that,
You're
right?
amazing. Great, thank you.
Again,
That's okay.
too much out of turn, but
Well, I think this is going to be our final question of the evening. So just in this last question, if you just want to say anything else to just wrap up, some of your thoughts for this evening, and just basically is, what do you see as your main responsibility as a Victor Board of Education member? So it's going to be that, and then anything else you want to say, and just thank you so much. I always say, and as Carol said, you are the ultimate volunteer, and we can't thank you enough. And I think we are starting with Lisa on this last closure.
I think my main role as a school board member is to be a representative and an advocate for our community and really prioritizing the needs of our students in the district. As Kristen just said, it's about being authentic and transparent. I take that very seriously. I want to make sure that I spend, the first 30 days and more listening to my other board members, listening to teachers, listening to students and staff and administration, hearing what the challenges they are facing and what I can do to make an impact there.
Thank you. I've always, throughout my career, business career, personal life, my mission, my major responsibility is always to be a good listener. Listen, analyze, determine what needs to be done, and take action. So my responsibility, if I was to say it in one word, would be, be a good listener. Understand what your community is saying, what they are expressing, what their needs are, what their wants are, and help to find solutions for the things that you're hearing. the last thing I wanted to say as I was listening to my colleagues sitting up here with me, one thing I'd like to mention is about the whole COVID experience is I think our parents were the heroes. I mean, I lived through it because I had my daughter-in-law and grandson living with us because obviously education was remote. They're from the New York City area, and New York City got hit pretty hard, so they lived with us during one school year. Thank goodness I have a retired school teacher as a wife. But what I saw my wife and my grandson doing every day online, I couldn't imagine how parents were doing that when they were trying to work and manage their families, et cetera. So my hat's off to the heroes of our district, the parents.
He had his hands full, his proud papa with his grandchildren. Every board member brings a skill set, and we have an amazing diversity of skills on the board, and I'm extremely excited to hear about Lisa's background and her skill set that she's going to bring to the board as well. But we can't, I don't want to be complacent in saying if I'm an educator, I just want to speak to education and as a experience in the classroom. So as the main responsibility that I'm thinking is that I need to be a lifelong learner and build new skills and become a financial person, even though that's not my favorite thing. But I've learned more about budgetary process, and that skill set has made me a better board member because I've attended budget workshops. I sometimes throw myself into committee work that I may not initially think that was a good match for me, but I forced myself out of my comfort to become a bit more adept at being able to have those conversations in areas that were not part of my original skill set. And to speaking to what Tim said about being a really good listener, and then back to that whole diversity, equity, and inclusion, just listening with an unconditional and without judgment to whatever people's concerns are or accolades are, and to be part of that positive disposition and culture that we're trying to create in whatever little corner of the district it might be. It's shedding light on areas that need growth and raising up and applauding those things that we're doing well. So just supporting every member of this district and community.
Thank you so much. On behalf of PTSA Pie and Voice, we really appreciate you being here tonight, and good luck in the election. And then just also from PTSA Pie and Voice, we would like to wish all the staff members a very, very happy Staff Appreciation Week, and PTSA Pie and Voice plan to give all the staff luncheons throughout May and June. So we'll be feeding you well and celebrating you. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Remember to vote, Carol says. Thank you.